Radio 1. Dance.
The space where I can just be.
From the underground to the arena. We're ready.
Get me ready for the action.
This is one. Radio 1's residency. Tonight
on the residency,
Todd Edwards.
Family and everyone else that's tuning in tonight. I am Todd Edwards, and this is my third show of my September BBC Radio 1 residency. I hope you all are well. You know, I was so happy that you all enjoyed the show last week talking about my involvement in the UK garage scene. I got a lot of nice comments across my socials, so thank you for that. If this is your first week tuning in, this is my 4-week residency for Radio 1. And I've given each show a theme. The first show was about classic house music, how it inspired me and how it inspired house music today. The second show, as I said before, was about my involvement in the UK garage scene. And tonight's show I've entitled The French Connection. Now, I'm not talking about the clothing line or the 1971 crime thriller film. I'm talking about my connection to French dance music, how it's impacted my music, how it's impacted my life. For as you may or may not know, I've worked with quite a few French producers. And at the top of that list is the one and only legendary Daft Punk. Throughout the show, I'll be discussing what it was like to work with them. I have a lot of great memories to share. But I'm also going to be talking about the other French producers that I've had the privilege of working with, like Surkin, Justice, and Germain, just to name a few. But before that, we're going to get into another track. The first one I opened with is by Braxe and Falke. It's called Intro. I remember hearing that track over 2 decades ago. Who would have thought that 20 years later, I'd be working with Fred? Again, I'll tell you more about him later on. But right now, let's get into this track by Peter Hellen. It's called Big Love.
Radio 1. Todd Edwards.
I am Todd Edwards, and this is BBC Radio 1 Residency. Remember to interact with us by tweeting at BBCR1. The last three tracks you heard were Peter Heller, Big Love, Cassius, My Feeling for You, and Cheek, Venus Sunshine People. And that was DJ Gregory on the remix. You know, when I first worked with Daft Punk in 1999, I got to meet their iconic circle of friends. I got to meet Philippe Zidar and Hubert Blanc-Francoeur, better known as Cassius. I didn't get to know them that well, but we did go to Philippe's studio, which had a window view of Paris, which for a Jersey boy like myself that really never left the country was crazy. They're also close friends with DJ Falcon, so I got to meet him, and he was quite hysterical, actually. And for the 2 weeks that I was in Paris, I was looked after by Pedro Winter. He was Daft Punk's manager at the time, but I'm sure you know him better as Busy P, and the owner of Ed Banger Records. Now, if by chance you don't know Ed Banger Records, well, that label is home to many a French musical titan, such as Justice, Cassius, SebastiAn, Mr. Wazoo, and the list goes on. Did you know that Daft Punk had 2 record labels, Roulet and Cri d'Amour? Cri d'Amour was looked after by Gilles Desloic. I got to meet him and become friends. But did you know that in 2002, he established the Maison Kitsune clothing store chain, which now spans across the globe? And of course, he created the Kitsune music label as well. I did a remix for that label. Anyway, I'll tell you some Daft Punk stories in a bit. But first, here is IQ, Disco Cubizm, Daft Punk mix. Todd Edwards on Radio 1. The last 2 tracks you heard were IQ, Disco Cubizm, and Phantom, Faithfull. Coming up next is the classic by Stardust, The Music Sounds Better With You. A little known fact about this song, Benjamin Diamond originally was trying to sing it more funky, more soulful, but it wasn't really working. It was Thomas Bangalter that recommended to him to try to sing it like a lounge singer performance. And that smoother take is what you hear in the song. And it's safe to say is part of the reason the song became a hit. When I was singing Face to Face, Tomas recommended that I sing it a little more raspy like a rock group, Foreigner to be specific. And that final vocal I performed was done with 2 takes, no auto-tune. So the lesson here, I think, is when Tomas Bangalter gives you advice, it's good to take it. Here's Stardust with The Music Sounds Better With You.
Music
Edwards on Radio 1. You just heard Vantage, track's called 50/50. And what you're listening to right now is Mid's fire remix of the track I did with Groove Armada called Lover for Now.
Stuck in your hair, enough for me to go.
Both are brilliant producers, and you can hear a bit of that influence from the French touch scene in their production. I love how Vantage makes tracks that actually sound like they're disco samples, but they're actually all played by him. Later on, I'll play the collab I did with Vantage. Up next is a track by Germain, or Saint Germain, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Back in 1995, I was listening to DJ Disciple's radio show, and all of a sudden, a deep house track comes on. There's like a spoken word on it that starts shouting out DJs and producers' names, paying respect to them. And then all of a sudden, I thought I heard my name being mentioned. Turned out it was. And it was a Saint Germain track. And I was like, wow, my music reached France. What was more wild is that the next week, I get a call from the French label F Communication Records, asking me to do a remix for Saint Germain, for his track Alabama Blues. Now that remix I did helped pay for a new sampler, the Ensoniq ASR-10, which had so much more sampling capability. Up to that point I was using the Ensoniq EPS, which had about 15 seconds of sample time. Aside from that remix paying for my sampler, I came to find out from Thomas Bangalter that it was that remix that got Daft Punk's attention and why they contacted me to work with them. One thing leads to another. Here is Saint Germain, Alabama Blues, followed by my remix of it.
I said I'm gonna leave Alabama, man. I said I'm gonna leave Alabama, man. I said I'm gonna leave Alabama, man. When I land in one hand, I said I'm gonna leave Alabama, man. Ride a little back home.
That was Saint Germain's Alabama Blues, followed by my remix of it. So right now, let's get into talking about Thomas Bangalter and Germain Homan Christoph, better known as Daft Punk. I originally met up with them before the release of Homework. They wanted to talk about a potential collaboration. Now, Germain was kind of silent, and I was really amazed about how knowledgeable Thomas was about the music business, the negotiating, very confident for a young 20-something-year-old, not realizing at that time that his father, Daniel Bangoto, had a very successful career in music doing disco. After that, things went silent for a bit and Homework came out. I thought maybe they lost interest. And then I saw a track on their album called Teachers, and presumptuously listened to it just to see if they said my name. And they did. Then in 1998, they reached out again about collaborating on their album Discovery. And let me tell you, I'm glad they waited till Discovery to work with me, because for me, it was quite an adventure. Now, Tomas and Germain came to my studio first in New Jersey. It was just a bedroom studio in my parents' house. They wanted to see what kind of equipment I had, and I was hoping that it was adequate. Judging by the smiles they had when they came in the room, I knew everything was going to be fine. So we talked a lot that day, but the next day we were going to get started. So the night before, I sampled up 70 samples. They came in, I played those samples for them, they really liked it. They then sampled 70 samples up. We put them all across the keys on the keyboard. Tomas tuned them, and we got to work patterning those samples. I was a little hesitant. I wasn't the most assertive person at that time. So Tomas spent a good amount of time at the keyboard. And let me tell you, he could do probably a better impression of a Todd Edwards track than I can. Anyway, there was a sample in the track that sounded like it was saying Face to Face, and that became the cornerstone of that track. From there, they flew me out to Paris, business class, I mind you, which was my first experience flying overseas. Put me up in the Tim Hotel, which had the best view of Paris, including the Eiffel Tower and the Sacré-Cœur. And honestly, we really didn't do any work. We hung out, we partied, I got to meet all their friends, experience Paris. It was pretty epic. But there was one thing Tomas said to me. He noticed that I held back in the studio, and I told him why, but that really stuck with me. So the next time that I flew out to Paris to finish the track with them, I decided to write the lyrics to Face to Face. Originally, all the songs on Discovery were going to have videos. It was going to make up a live-action film. It was going to focus on people that were pretty much stuck, doing nothing but working, just cogs in a machine, getting angry, feeling held down by the society they were living in. Hence the song, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger.
One more time.
Shared with me one of the pieces of electronics that he used to vocode his voice, and that was the Digitech Talker. I picked one up at the time. It was pretty cheap, actually, but it sounded so good, and actually I used it in multiple remixes and tracks, one of them being my remix for MJ Cole's Crazy Love. Tomas's studio in Paris, filled with analog gear he'd been collecting. Drum machines and sequencers I didn't recognize. There was stuff all over. I wish I had the foresight he had to collect analog gear in the 90s. He was definitely forward-thinking at a young age. Now, I had lost touch with Tomas and Germain for a while, from before their Alive tour. I went through a dark period and even stepped away from music for a while. But then, I read that Daft Punk was going to be scoring Tron Legacy. I was excited about that, and I absolutely loved the album when I heard it. Fortunately, I had Tomas and Germain's most recent email address, and I reached out to them just to tell them congratulations, I loved the soundtrack. So Tomas and I started emailing a lot, and then we had some phone calls, which was followed by a meeting in New York again, the place where I met them for the first time. They wanted to talk about a new project they were working on. I had to follow very closely because it was so in-depth I thought my ears were going to bleed. It had to do with West Coast music, going back to their roots. Honestly, I still didn't have a clear picture of what this album was going to be, but of course I wanted to be on board. Later on that year, during the mastering process of their fourth album, Random Access Memories, Tomas told me it was that congratulatory email I sent that really got them interested in me doing some work on their fourth album. I was surprised. I was like, really? And Germain was like, yeah, you were one of our favorites to work with, and we lost touch with you. I'm like, well, you could have just called or emailed me. And without missing a beat, Tomas goes, no, we thought it was better to make this soundtrack to get your attention. The man is not only a genius, but he has the funniest dry wit. More Daft Punk talk to come, but first let's get into this track by Fred Falke, Be What You Are. Is More and More by Fred Falke. Fred has always been a major player in the French touch scene. He's such a talented musician. Over the last 2 years, I did 2 collaborations with him and DJ producer Zen Freeman, who's a very good friend as well. Fred and Zen also teamed up to make their duo group Ampersound. Now, I've also been encouraging Fred to get his individual music out. He has like 2 hard drives of tracks that aren't released. It's like, get them out, Fred. Get them out. The world needs your music. Todd Edwards on Radio 1. What you're hearing right now is The Big Booya by Jess and Crabbe. Before that was Fred Falke, More and More. So let's talk about random access memories. This time it's in Los Angeles, California at the Jim Henson Studios. Once again, Daft flies me out business class, in which I sat behind David Schwimmer and his wife, and I played peekaboo with their baby daughter. Now, I haven't been in LA since I was a kid. And aside from working on music, Tomas and Guimon took me to parties. You know those parties that you see in 80s films? Like things get kind of wild, and you're like, I've never seen that happen at a party before. They're taking place in LA, basically. We went to a friend's birthday party at a bar at the Roosevelt Hotel. I looked over at the DJ, and I said to the person next to me, that DJ looks a lot like Elijah Wood. And then he turned to me and said, that is Elijah Wood. Who knew? Elijah Wood was a good DJ. Into house music, too. When I first got to the Henson Studios, Tomas and Guimon played me the instrumental tracks that were taking form on the album. I swear all the air got sucked out of the room, and I just thought to myself, this is going to be a masterpiece. The best way to describe it was a Daft Punk album that had to be done without samples and all live instrumentation. And I think that's exactly what it was. So finally one day, Tomas plays the music for me that will become Fragments of Time. And I gotta be honest, I'm a little scared because most of the album was very dancey and this one sounded like soft rock with a twinge of country. So I was actually scared I wasn't gonna be able to write something. But, I wasn't going to let anyone in on that fear. However, as the days went on, I would constantly just talk to Tomas about how amazing it was in LA. I didn't want to leave. I'm already thinking of leaving and it's making me sad. Driving from his house in the hills with the top down, going to the studio. It was always sunny out. We would go different places. I started to get deja vu. And throughout that week, as I was telling Tomas all my feelings about being there, Tomas said, that's what the song is going to be about. And at one point in his house, all of a sudden, he snapped his fingers and says, Fragments of Time. That's going to be the name of the track. Then in Henson Studios, we sat down. They pressed record on the microphones. And Tomas and I sat there for 5 hours writing this song. It really did come together. And I hope you can feel the sincerity in the song because really it is about what I was feeling while I was in Los Angeles. On the production side of things, Tomas set up a computer in the small room off the main studio, and he wanted me to do my cut-ups on the music. So I did that, and I was working on it. We even took some sound patterns from the crystal organ, the one you see when you open up the album cover of Ram. So I'm working away. I finally get like a pattern that I feel really good about. Tomas and Germain come in. They're really happy with it. And then they loop it around, and then I realize at this point, this is going to be the music for the chorus. And that's exactly what I said. I'm like, wow, you're making this the chorus music? And he's like, yes, what did you think? It was just going to be an 8-bar pattern? I'm like, well, yeah, it could have been.
I'll just keep playing back these fragments of time. Everywhere I go, these moments will shine.
Tomas gave me a big thanks. He said I really saved the track because it was the most contemporary track on the whole album, and it needed something. I didn't know he was bringing me in as a producer, so I was honored to do that as well. And who would have thought? It won me a Grammy. Life changed so much for me in 1 year. Working with them was so inspiring. The first time I called my mom from LA, she heard how happy I was in my voice, and she said, you need to be out there. She's like, there's nothing for you in New Jersey. She's like, I'd miss you if you go, but I'd feel worse if you stayed. And so she gave me her blessing to leave. And here I thought I was going to be like the family caretaker for the rest of my life. So I packed up a U-Haul and drove across country to LA. And I've been living there for 8 years now. Just remember, there's a fine line between the guy that's living with his parents for way too long and a Grammy Award winner. Right now, we're getting into my Moments in Time mix, and it features some of the French talent that I've been able to remix and collaborate with. Starting it off with, as if I need to tell you, Daft Punk and Todd Edwards, Face to Face.
Understanding, it's not your fault. I was being too demanding. I must admit, it's my pride that made me distant. All because I hope that you'd be someone different. There's not much I know about you. Fear will always make you blind. But the answer is in clear view. It's amazing what you'll find face to face.
Radio 1 Dance.
Now you're listening to the song Think I'm in Love, Vantage on the production. I wrote and sang the song, and actually, my manager, who is actually a very talented producer and DJ, Nicky McNeese, he came up with the top line melody for the chorus. He didn't want to take any credit for it, but I hate when people don't get the proper credit, so I'm giving it to him now. Before that was Tchami, Damaged Hearts. I wrote and sang that one as well, and I'm excited to say I have another one in the pipeline with Tchami. I'm hoping this one will be from my album. Up next is my remix of Appaloosa's The Day We Fell in Love. That was the Kitsune remix I did. My remix dub of Benjamin Diamond's A Little Scared. And just a reminder, this is BBC Radio 1 and you're listening to The Residency. Now you may have noticed we're in a new Thursday night slot. Every weekend from 11 p.m. we're warming you up for the weekend. Jaguar kicks things off with Introducing Dance from 10 p.m. And for the rest of the month, it's me, Todd Edwards, at 11. Followed by Ella Minus at midnight.
Todd Edwards.
Radio 1.
Todd Edwards. You're listening to my residency on Radio 1. That last song was Money, my remix of a collaboration I did with Fred Falke and Zen Freeman. The last three tracks you heard were in order: my remix of Justice DVNO under my Sunshine Brothers moniker, and then my remix of Para One's Elevation. Then finally we have my remix of Surkin's Next of Kin. I'm just about out of time, but I wanted to share a little bit more about Daft Punk. Now, their third album, Human After All, originally got some bad reviews. They were actually taken back, I think, after Ram was released. Human After All was definitely different from Daft Punk's prior albums, but to me it was clear it was a highly influential album in the French touch scene. It definitely had a harder-edged sound, and I think you can hear their influence in the first album that Justice put out, and in the work of SebastiAn. See what you think. Up now is Daft Punk's Robot Rock, followed by Justice's track Genesis and Walkman by SebastiAn. Check it out.
Todd Edwards.
Radio 1. Radio 1. Dance.
So that's it for this week. Don't forget, I'll be back same time, same place next week with an hour of newness for you, plus stories from my time working with Defected and a bunch of my new music that I want to share with you. Remember, you can listen back to this whole mix again and check out the track listing on BBC Sounds app. My last 2 shows are up there too. Thank you, Radio 1, and thank you for everyone that's tuned in tonight. I hope you have a great weekend. Bonsoir.